In one of my last videos, I talked about frustration through the lens of peak performance. I talked about optimal learning through the lens of peak performance. I'm mostly looking at flow state research, a lot of it pioneered by Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheal. One of the things that I think I didn't highlight enough and bring enough attention to in the last video is the importance of a proper challenge. People in the last video were commenting about, there was two comments that I thought made me want to address this a little bit further. And one of the types of comments was essentially, you know, while I understand what you're trying to say, I feel like the optimal learning process doesn't involve too much frustration, at least not for me. I prefer to just have a calm, analytic mind where I just go, this is what I need to be doing differently, and try and stay calm about it. That was one, um, I guess I would say critique. And then there was another question that was, well, what do I do about the frustration? Like, how do I handle the frustration? So when I was talking about frustration being a good thing in the learning process, I was talking about how norepinephrine is a brain chemical released when we're frustrated that helps with focus. It's a focus chemical as well as a chemical that'll help prime the brain for learning. So in that atmosphere, frustration is a beneficial part of the learning process. Now, when we look at flow state research and peak performance research, a number that popped up, at least in what I've read, is this idea of 104% or having a challenge that is just outside of what you're capable of. And I think when people are talking about frustration being detrimental to the learning process, at least for them personally, they're talking about a challenge that has exceeded this threshold. When something exceeds this like 104% threshold, the event can be so frustrating that you're not actually learning from it. You're not capable of learning from it because it's so far beyond what you're capable of now that you're not actually able to pick up the lesson that you need to overcome the obstacle. So, for example, League of Legends, if you are bronze or chess, let's say you're 500 elo, and you're playing against somebody who is 1,000 elo, you might not learn a whole lot and just find yourself really frustrated. You're going to be losing and you're not going to know why. Whereas maybe somebody who's just a tiny bit better than you, you'll be able to say, okay, well, they're playing mostly like me, but this is one area that I can tell that if I improved, I could have beat them. When you can't come to that conclusion, I think frustration builds to a point where it's suddenly not helpful. And in all honesty, the answer might need to be I need to take a step back and try and find a way to bring the challenge level down to something that I'm capable of achieving. So that is one really, really key component of optimal learning as well as dealing with frustration is having a proper amount of frustration. I come from a very Taoist school of thought, very yin and yang, and this idea of balance or Wu Wei, the middle path. And I think that's something that it's a lens that's important to keep in mind with almost anything, the idea of moderation being key. You don't want so much frustration that you're starting to act in service of your emotions and break, punch actual holes in the wall. You maybe want enough frustration to where you're punching the wall, but not leaving a mark. And in that moment of frustration, when you punch the wall, you had a aha, come to Jesus moment where you've solved this difficult challenge in your life. So like everything, the answer is balance. And then to those who want a little bit more when it comes to dealing with frustration, I recommend you watch one of my most recent videos. It was a upload from a few years ago on a Twitch stream I was doing where I had one of my viewers come on and we talked about mindfulness meditation. And honestly, the viewer asked some wonderful questions. I would start talking about like what the basics of mindfulness based meditation were, and he would stop me and ask me questions anytime. Even if I just said a word with extra importance, he might stop and say, okay, well, why gently, why does it feel like you're putting extra importance on that? And so he was able to help me elaborate a lot of things that I might have glossed over if I was just trying to teach mindfulness based meditation. So I highly recommend checking that video out, as one of the topics that he asked involved frustration. It got me talking a lot about frustration and how mindfulness can help with that, as well as talking about, creating space in order to have space between the stimulus that frustrates you and your action in regard to that frustration. Because oftentimes one of the hardest things with frustration as well as negative emotions is that the stimulus that sets you off and causes the negative emotion ends up with an immediate reaction before you have time to really process what's going on. And mindfulness, I go into how mindfulness helps to start create the space between stimulus and response. I hope this video was helpful. I love you all. Peace. Have a good day.